It's like you're drinking a tab, like your mom used to drink before
It
Jazzercise.
smells real bad.
I should probably put the mic up to my mouth.
Like the can smells real bad. I had the mini fridge out here unplugged since I don't know how many episodes ago.
That'll do it.
I just found some yogurts in there.
It's going to be like a challenge episode. Are you going to eat them on camera?
Yeah, it's already moldy on the outside.
I got to remain sober enough for that to be the name of the title.
Yeah, this stinks. This came out of the same fridge. I stuck it in the fridge inside for a couple hours just to cool it down. But the can smells real bad.
Yeah. Welcome to Moldy on the Outside, episode 208. Yeah, so I'm in the middle of what could be the beginnings of a haboob, but it could just be some wind. I don't know.
There was a 70% chance of rain around 9 o'clock here. That didn't happen.
I felt when I was waiting on you, that's not a dig. That's just something that happened. I felt like 2 or 3 drops, and I thought I'd have to go in. But it's so nice outside right now.
Turns out it was just the upstairs neighbor.
Yeah, gleeking on me from the patio because I'm setting up an entire recording studio on the patio, the shared patio. Yeah. All right. So what did you open that smells like ass?
It's the same thing I had last time. It's the only thing I have on hand. I'm out of other canned wine, so this is that spritzer, that summer red that I.
I should get
partook in previously.
Yeah, I should get upset that you can't be bothered to get anything new, but I guess I'm just blessed and I'm fortunate that you're making the time at all.
Yeah, it's been a busy week. I would have done that today, but
deadline day, baby.
Couldn't.
Did you get it?
I'm done.
Good. I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
See, now, according to most creators, you deserve a drink because you put an issue to bed. You should be pouring yourself a whiskey or something.
It's so weird though, the finishing of a thing, because
the build-up's always better than the climax.
Well, no, because now it's done. So now I'm in that space where I'm technically unemployed, and also forever and ever I've thought of especially comic book deadlines when there's like finishing one issue and going on to the next. It's just the timer in the bunker and Lost. You put in the code and the thing resets. And then it counts down again, and you have to constantly keep doing it and doing it and doing it to prevent the end of the world.
Yeah, it's like if we celebrated every time we put an issue to bed, then that would be like someone who works an office job every 5 weeks, just throwing themselves their own party.
Yeah,
for doing their job. Yeah, it's just
seems silly.
The next day is another day. But, maybe you could take tomorrow off and we could have lunch, but that's a different discussion, not for recording purposes. Okay, so I am drinking. I have a little bit. I've experimented the last 2 nights with some reds, but I also got the same. $3.
My fingers, if you can't see that on camera.
Oh, I think lightning just happened, and I'm holding a giant metal dildo to my mouth. That was a plane, also, by the way. So the last couple of nights I've been experimenting with some reds, but they're $3 red wines. And how bad does it sound?
Oh, it's loud.
Sorry, everyone.
It sets the mood.
Well, the problem is, before I get into my wine of the week, but the problem is the studio still has internet. We don't have good internet at the studio. Otherwise, I would drive to the studio and record this in the studio.
No worries.
But we don't. I'm kind of dealing with what I got to deal with, and I just felt like 10 raindrops.
Oh, it'll be fine. I want to hear this wreck because I know this is probably one of your $3 bottles.
Right. So okay. I'm trying to delve into the reds. So I saw whatever reds they had for $2.99 at Fry's. Might be a Kroger in your area. It's a Fry's in Arizona. And so I got a Merlot and a Cabernet Sauvignon. And I don't love red wine still. I am drinking this cold with ice in it. It's all melted now. So now I'm drinking a watered down Merlot. I don't love it as much as the whites, either of them. And it proves my theory from last time I tried to drink wine that red wine will give you a different buzz than white wine. And I don't love the red wine buzz. It makes me tired. Like last night we were supposed to record and I texted you and yesterday you couldn't record. The night before I said I'm too tired. But part of the reason I was too tired was the red wine. But I do have a show drink over here that goes with our topic, because what you're drinking is barely a wine.
Yeah, it's not.
So I'm gonna drink a beer that purports to be a wine. I'm drinking the Rosé Our Way by Four Peaks, and it's a cranberry infused ale. So it's supposed to taste like a rosé. 6.7%. Four Peaks of Phoenix, Arizona. It's got some floaties in the bottom.
Oh.
Interesting. This might come up later in the show. They could have done a better job on the label.
If you want it to, it's wine inspired. I get it. Mission accomplished.
Right. Mission accomplished. Okay. Do you have any? Oh, by the way, this is the Illustrious Gentleman, Moldy on the outside. Go to tigshow.com to find out how to buy shirts, how to support the show, how to become a Patreon, how to buy us around, how to become a sponsor. All that's available at tigshow.com. Yeah. Anything exciting since last Thursday when I talked to you?
No, not really.
I'm struggling to think of two things I watched on TV. I did finish Invincible last night because my wife went to bed crack her ass early last night, so I stayed up and watched Invincible.
Okay, so now that you've watched the entire first season, is this something that would be appropriate to show to a 13-year-old?
Man, that last episode is rough for a 45-year-old.
The subway scene was intense.
Yeah, it was. Because you've already seen the first 7 episodes, so you know what they're doing, but then they just ratchet it up to another level of like, holy shit, they really did that. Like, I remember when I read the comics, even I, as a comic book colorist and a fan of everyone that works on that book, sometimes I'd be like, that's too much blood. Like, his hand is completely red. It's so much covered in blood. And then the cartoon just pulled no punches. The way I never think really too much about the acting in cartoons, but I thought J.K. Simmons and Stephen Yeun, I thought they did a great job in the scene where they're fighting for most of the episode. I thought the voice work was great. Because it's hard to pull off like super impassioned voice work, I think maybe, but I really bought into it. I thought it was great. 13. I mean, I guess if you think back when I was 13, I was watching like, I'd go to a friend's house and watch adult films. So it's like, I was watching like Commando. I mean, the body count in Commando was like 100, so like when I was 13, I would have loved Invincible when I was 13, but kids these days grow up different.
Thinking back, Commando's fairly bloodless, even for like the era. I don't remember a lot of crazy blood.
I guess maybe like the second Rambo,
but like RoboCop and Predator and Aliens.
Yeah, but kids these days grow up so differently than we did. Like our parents had no supervision over what we watched or ingested or listened to.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you worry? You think it's going to desensitize them to violence? I mean,
no, that's not really a worry.
Yeah. No. Because you're kidding yourself if you think if he's 13, he hasn't watched anything that bad yet. Violence wise. I mean, I remember.
But I don't even know what it is. I think it's the sum of everything. I think it's just the intensity of the show. It's the sum of the violence and the themes and the relationships. It's all very intense.
I felt my heart rate getting a little elevated watching it last night, just being like, Jesus, this is nonstop. Like, you think it's going to stop, and then the subway scene happens, and then you think it's going to stop, and then the other scene happens, and then
then he gets to murder Immortal again.
Right. the same way he murdered him the first time. When's he going to learn you got to take a mortal's head and just crush it into jelly and then take that jelly and put it inside a volcano?
I hope he comes back.
Yeah. Yeah, I like it. I love the fact that he was Abraham Lincoln at one point. So good. Yeah, you know, but again, as much as I say, what's the harm in just telling your kid, like, oh, wait till season 2 comes out. Maybe we'll watch both seasons. You know, what's the harm? The harm in, unless I doubt all of his friends are talking about it around the water fountain at school.
Yeah, and it's probably not a good idea because I'm more than likely to be rejected. Like he's going to turn me down because he right now his thing is Star Wars and he's enjoying the Bad Batch, which is a far cry from Invincible.
Okay, so I see what's going on here. He's not saying, Dad, can I watch Invincible? You're trying to bond. You're trying to find something to bond with him over.
Everything I try to show him. I try to show him Gremlins or Predator. He's just like,
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. Yeah, like my kids, when I recommend something, they don't know that I was recommending, like, let's watch it together. They'll wait like 3 weeks and they'll be like, oh, where can I watch that show you recommended after I've already seen it? And they'll just go watch it on their own, like The Boys or something like that. But yeah, I get it. You just want to bond. What do you think about the Bad Batch? I haven't watched it, but I did enjoy
That's not for me.
I did enjoy them in Clone Wars when they showed up.
If this is anything like Clone Wars that I also did not see, I don't think that would be for me either. I'm just not its target audience. It's very much a show for 13-year-olds.
Well, then that's why your kid likes
Which is not a bad thing. Like,
no.
I mean, most Pixar movies are for 6-year-olds, but I also enjoy most of them and think they're good. Mm-hmm. But I do not enjoy this, and I don't find it particularly good or compelling.
Okay.
Which is an indictment, probably.
They just wanted to save money by only having one voice actor in the main cast.
I just don't get it. And I come into it already with a lot of people my age, with the bias already against all of the prequel stuff. It's like, I don't care at all about clone troopers. I don't care about the Republic or any of that garbage. So,
right.
Whatever.
Well, one last note then before we get into it. I want to give a shout out. We had our studio open house last Friday. So we had some people came over, friends of the show, Tyler Button, friends of local comics, Ryan Quackenbush, who else? My brother, my family, Gonzo's family, and then Mike Malvey showed up. Thomas Healy, friend of the show, Thomas Healy showed up. Mike Malvey showed up, and in perfect Mike Malvey fashion, I walked out to his car with him and helped him carry in probably a case of beer that he brought that was not necessary but was well appreciated. He also brought something that's not yet on the market that we kind of did a test run. He brought, I think he brought 4 4-packs of that. So everyone a lot of people tested those. I don't want to say it's marketed towards women exclusively, but I will say the women who had it all enjoyed it immensely. And then when people left, they were taking samples to take home to their spouses. So it's kind of something that's geared towards, it's not beer, put it that way.
Yeah, it's 4-pack.
Yeah. So that'll be on the market. I don't know if I can say what it is. I don't want to out Malvey, but it was delicious according to everyone who had some. And then that lovable son of a bitch brought me another bottle of Santan whiskey, and it was I don't even know if this is on the market yet, but it was salted caramel whiskey. And when we got home, my brother and I went out on the front porch, cracked that thing open, poured it over ice. It might be the most drinkable whiskey I've ever had in my entire life.
It sounds like it.
I mean, there was almost just to the very back, you'd be like, oh, there's the burn. Like, that's how you know it's like a whiskey. or maybe it's considered a bourbon. I'm not quite sure, but you could feel the burn at the very end, but prior to that, it's just delicious. And it's not as I'm a fan of honey whiskey, but sometimes that can be a little too syrupy or a little too thick or heavy. And this was none of that. It is it's a goddamn knockout. Santan's doing some real shit over there. Tell you what. So then he showed up. Some other comic guys showed up. It was just a fun night. We had a ton of beer. I didn't get stupid. I don't think. Tyler, again, shout out to Tyler. He brought food. No one thought to bring food. So we had like 40 something beers there and a bottle of wine and all this other shit. And no one had food. And then Tyler brings some tacos. So thank you, Tyler. Yeah, so that's it. I haven't watched anything other than what I was already watching. Mayor of Easttown, which had on last week's episode had an ending, like something happened like 5 minutes before the ending or 10 minutes before the ending that made my wife go, me and my wife went, holy shit. And then my wife like did that thing where she covered her mouth and did this for the rest of the episode. That rarely happens in TV shows these day and age where you're shocked like that.
Yeah. Not since The Boys.
Yeah. So so all I've done is watch the exact same thing. I've watched hockey playoffs and I've listened to soccer games and I've watched Mayor of Easttown and A Handmaid's Tale. That's it. So super exciting shit in the southern compound here. All right. So anything else? Any other small talk before we get into the...
No. Well, what do we got?
I sent them to you.
Oh, did you? Did I?
You
responded?
I think you said cool.
Oh.
But again, this was 48 hours ago. You've had a busy 48 hours.
Yeah, like a goldfish.
So, I didn't send you the prompts. Hank was supposed to send you the prompts. And if Hank didn't do it, let me know off air and we'll have a meeting. But basically I said we needed some questions, because I thought we were going to record Tuesday. So Tuesday at like 4 in the afternoon, I said, hey, we need questions for recording tonight. And that son of a bitch who's always there for us, creator of Ally McBeal, David Kelly, chimed in. And he said he was listening to an Ed Brubaker interview, and it prompted a question for us. And it says, is there a format for comics that you think works? Or is there a format you think could work better or best? We've talked a little bit about comic book periodicals and how comics are released. So he was kind of asking us to delve into that a little bit, and we really have nothing else to talk about. So why not, David and Scott?
Sure. Okay.
So my only note here before I get into it is everything I'm going to say, keep in mind that I have no idea how any format changes would affect the financials at the publisher level or the retailer level.
Yeah.
I'm just talking about me as a creator and me as a reader, because I assume monthly periodicals are important, very important to both publishers and retailers.
Yeah, we're seeing, I don't know, like 5% of what we would actually need to see in order to make some sort of sound judgment on this topic.
Right. So as most of our topics, we're just
full of shit.
Yeah. We're just talking smack. Trademark. It's time for the talking smack segment. Yeah. Speaking of talking smack, studio mate Jay Gonzo asked me if I had seen Jupiter's Legacy and if I planned to watch Jupiter's Legacy, because he wanted to hear you and I talk about it. And I said, you know what? I think we're trying to get away from just talking shit on stuff. And I don't want to, I know if I watch it, I'm going to have a problem with it. So why even bring that into my life? I'm trying to be better. Much like Melania Trump's website, I'm trying to be better.
Yeah. I haven't sought out anything on it. The Weekly Planet boys were divided over it. So I'm going to pass for right now unless somebody I trust comes out and just gives it a glowing recommendation.
Right.
But it's just not a thing I need in my life right now.
Yeah, I honestly don't know if there's anybody I trust enough. Like, I don't know if I trust anyone's opinion on TV to say. I mean, you were giving a glowing review to something last week. I have not even put that in my queue to watch. So
I'm sure that is better than Jupiter's Legacy.
I'm sure it is too. All right, so for people who we've talked about comic book formats in the past a little bit, but just to recap, because this is going to come up before I talked about my first note here. Have you come around to reading digital comics?
Oh, sure.
Okay, and how you read them page by page on an iPad, right? So
yeah, that's the only way I read comics.
So
now.
they're almost print size, right?
Or it's the only way I buy new comics now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And on an iPad, they're practically print size.
Yeah, I've got the 12.9 iPad Pro. So yeah, it's
right.
You're not losing anything.
Yeah, and on my Surface Pro, if I turn it portrait direction, it's also slightly bigger than a comic book, so it's perfect.
Yeah.
And then my monitor at work, if I read them at work, is 22 by 12 or something, so it's perfect to read 2 pages at a time. So like a double
just
page.
Turn your monitor sideways and have a giant page.
Sure. So yeah, that's my first note here is I don't know how feasible. I mean, I guess they need it for money, and any changes would have to take months to get rolling and to get the income in. But the more monthly comics I buy, the more monthly periodicals I buy, I feel like I'm just wasting money. And I was talking to someone last weekend at the studio open house. I won't say who, but he was saying if he added up, he reads a lot of comics for free, but he was saying if he had to pay retail for all that, it would be like $50 a week for the comics that he reads, because a lot of new stuff coming out is $6.99 comics, $5.99 comics, because they throw backups in there and they're all event books. Even non-event books are $3.99 to $4.99 now. Thomas Healy wanted me to point out that Spawn is still stayed at $2.99. It's never gone above $2.99. Shout out to Todd. But personally, I think, if money wasn't a factor, we're not thinking about keeping our friends' retail businesses in business, I think monthly periodicals should be digital only. I don't see the value in printing floppy comics anymore. For
sure.
For $4 a piece.
Yeah, I've got my knee right now pressed against a box, one of the short boxes. I got a stack of 10 of the short boxes down here under my feet, and they're in the garage. Like, what the fuck am I going to do with these?
Yeah, well,
I've got all the trades inside on a bookshelf, but these, they're cumbersome and they take up space, and they're not easily accessible. Yeah, if I'm going to buy a floppy, it's going to be digital. And I don't know. Yeah, I don't want to say that. I do know. I don't want to own anything that's not collected.
Yeah, so I'm the same. I just, in my recent move, I moved probably over 3,000 floppies, if not more. 15 short boxes, 2 long boxes, and then like 3 or 4 random boxes. That doesn't include my comps that I also moved around. So, but again, yeah, at the studio, all my trades are outside next to my desk in a bookshelf, and all my floppies are in boxes in the storage part of the studio. And I got no problem with that. I like the idea. I like the thought, I should say. I like the thought that I might go through and organize all that one day, decide like, I can probably give away 4 of the 5 Ravage 2099 number ones I have. I could probably give those away. Just keep one, because it's one of these days they're going to make an MCU movie of Ravage, and then that's going to be worth some money. Great. But I don't have a lot of interest in like I've noticed when I go and buy comics, sometimes I'll buy 3 or 4 in a week, and then I'll just read them in like an hour. And then I'm like, well, I just spent And I'm not even a guy spending a lot of money. Like that's not a lot of money on comics. I'm at the bottom end there. You know, I get, you know, hookups a little bit sometimes. So it's like I'm not paying what a lot of people pay to read their comics, what Joe Schmo who reads Superman and Batman pays. But sometimes I mean, four comics can be like between like $12 and $20, depending on what you get.
Yeah, okay. That's an interesting point. So,
but please buy comics and keep your retail shop in business.
The what's the word I'm looking for? The duration of like entertainment value from a floppy is so lopsided one way. I don't know of anything else that's like that. Even if you go to the movie theater or something, you buy I don't know what the fuck movie tickets are there.
Let's just say
now
$10.
$10.
Sure.
A 2-hour movie, so $5 an hour. You're gonna pay also $5 for a single issue and blow through it in 3-5 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, let's say for the cost of HBO Max, which is $15 a month, that's like 4 comic books. But for HBO Max, I get thousands and thousands of hours of entertainment.
Yeah, so it's almost like $1 a minute. It's like a sex phone line.
Yeah, I mean, they both get me going.
Right.
A good Pepe Larraz book and a phone sex line get me going the same way. Yeah, you sent me over a JPEG the other day, and it was a Pepe Larraz Captain America, and I had to take a couple minutes to compose myself afterwards. But I do understand that that's the lifeblood, that's the mill that churns, that gets you paid, that keeps publishers. It's the need money now. But let's imagine a world that I think is the ideal world where, and this is what I do with Panel Syndicate. I've talked about Panel Syndicate before on this podcast. Black Hand Ironhead, the first issue of the second volume just dropped. So I get it on Panel Syndicate, and it's a pay what you want. And I usually pay $1 or $2, which, you know, Comixology, new comics are the same price. So new comics are like $4 on Comixology. But I pay like $1 to $2. Sorry, David Lopez. I should probably give you more money. But then, so let's say 4 issues come out over 4 months. I pay $4 for those 4 digital issues. I will also buy the trade when it's collected in print for, you know, $15 or whatever. So in reality, I'm not spending as much as I would on the 4 floppies plus a trade, but I am getting the trade plus spending money on the floppies.
That's fun.
Yeah. So I'm actually, if I'm supporting it digitally and buying the trade, I'm actually spending more money than I would if I just bought the trade. Might not be a lot, might only be $4 extra, but you know, and I like that because there's a lot of floppies that I've bought, number ones or something like that, and I'm like, oh, this didn't do it for me. I'm not going to buy any more. And me, it being a miserly old man, I would rather spend $1 or $2 to find out I don't like the title than to spend $5 to find out I don't like a title.
Right. Yeah, so it trades the better value, but it's only the better value because the publisher has already made its money on the floppies. Yeah,
I guess that makes sense. They've already paid the talent to work on the books.
Right.
So I guess that's something to take into account. If floppies went away and they were all just digital,
then you're going to have a higher priced collection.
Right. And I don't know how much floppies are, but let's say a $3.99 book collects a 5-issue arc. You would have spent $20 for those 5 comics. The trade's probably like $20 too. All right. So I guess my point is I like the idea of reading floppies digitally and then buying the trade.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would do that. I don't think I own a collection of anything I own. in floppies.
Yeah, but there's something about pulling a book off a shelf and being able to flip through it
Sure.
that I really enjoy.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to go back and reread the first 5 issues of Black Hand Ironhead, I don't want to. And let me be full honesty here. I don't own that collection yet. I have it all digitally, but I don't want to go through all my files and be like, where are those comics I downloaded? Like,
Okay. Do you? I mean, Comixology doesn't work like that.
Well, no, you're right. But I'm talking about like on my computer when I download a comic that I buy on my computer, then it's in a certain folder or something like that. But for something I've already read and experienced, if I'm looking back at it again, I'm looking back at it for the art. And at that point, I want it in print. At that point, I want it to be something I can hold and admire and study.
Okay.
Because there's something to print that you can't duplicate digitally.
A feeling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, you sit there, you flip through a book, you talk to your friends about the book. It's great. You pass it on.
Pass it around.
Yeah.
Smell.
Mm-hmm. And if I didn't spend $20 on the floppies, I have no problem spending $15 to $20 on a trade to support a creator that I like. I guess it's a little different if you're talking Marvel DC, because I guess the creators are getting royalties, so you're still supporting creators. But yeah, like, put it this way, in a floppy comic that costs full price, and I realize this sounds terrible to Corey Cab Comics, who his lifeblood is selling floppies, and I'm all on board with you, buddy. But if I buy a floppy for $4 and it doesn't blow me away on the first issue, I'm not picking up issue 2. Whereas if it was digital, if it was digital and it was half price, I might give it 2 or 3 issues to do the slow
thing,
burn.
though, right? Though, is that digital isn't. It isn't half price.
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm using Panel Syndicate for my argument because it's a pay what you want. You can pay half price. Like, I'm a firm believer in an ideal world where everyone's making money and the economics aren't important. I think all digital floppies should be $1. But we don't live in that world, but that's kind of where an ideal world, that's where I think we should be. But yeah, Comixology, I think they're full price for the first month, and then month 2, they go down by $1. But you're still paying $3 for a digital book that you technically don't even own. If Comixology and Amazon decide to shut down, everything you've ever bought on Comixology goes away because you don't own it. It stays in your library.
Yeah. And which I was thinking about this just a minute ago, which is a problem. But then I got to thinking, I don't know how long I'm going to own any of this print stuff that I have, you know?
Well, I mean, when I was moving and putting stuff in boxes and moving them and stacking them and all that stuff, I can see, you got the little handhold in a short box. You can see the first comic on there.
Uh-huh.
And it's, let me describe what I can see and you tell me if you know what comic it is. All I see is a female's belly in yellow spandex, a woman's belly in red spandex with a couple spikes, and then a man's belly with a Union Jack costume.
Okay.
Do you know what
Excalibur?
Excalibur #1. So to me, that actually does hold sentimental value to me. I've been lugging it around since 1989 or 1988 or whenever the fuck it came out. So
yeah.
So when you say, how long am I going to lug that around? For me, I've been lugging some of these books around for 35 years.
Yeah. Okay. So different strokes for different folks. I'm not really
Moldy on the outside.
I wouldn't consider myself a collector of anything. And I don't know that I have been in a while. Like the stuff down by my knees, these 10 short boxes.
But why do you keep moving them if you don't consider it a collection?
I don't, because I've always had them, I guess. But if some circumstance arose tomorrow where it was, okay, you can't have these anymore, I might not be bummed about it for more than a couple of seconds.
So you wouldn't be like Eric Larson after his fire. You wouldn't rebuy old runs of books.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I could recollect my backlash run for a song, and
Right. You mean like a $3 song, like a jukebox song?
yeah.
Yeah.
And I might miss my flash run, my Mark Waid flash run, but again, that's something I would rather have in trade. So I could just I could go through this stuff right now and make a list of the things that I would like to keep and just buy the trades and get rid of all this stuff. Several years ago, I did a purge and I got rid of maybe half of my floppies. I just traded them into Bookmans. And
How much Bookman's trade did you get for that?
oh, I don't remember. I did find a couple of sweet 12-inch original Ninja Turtles figures to complete my quartet, and I found an original Ninja Turtles animation cell at Bookman's, so I got that too. So I feel like I won.
Okay. All right. So then let's again, my thought was very specific to one specific website. And I wouldn't mind if Marvel DC did it too, but again, there'd have to be a system in place where I'm not paying I'm not paying $4 for a digital 22-page comic book. There's no world that happens, because
Okay.
if it's the same price as print, I want it on paper so I can look at it and dissect it and spend time with it. Because there is something about looking at comics. Ideally, good comics are designed to flip open and there's a reveal and there's 2-page spreads, and there's, even if they're not 2-page spreads, the page on the right should flow with the page on the left. It's designed to be read as a booklet, as a magazine format. At least it used to be.
Yeah, I would argue not specifically anymore.
Right.
And with digital, you're not getting stuff lost in the crease on a double-page spread. You can see everything.
I will say one thing I hate about Comixology is I hate the panel by panel feature. That's not how
I don't even use that.
That's not how comics were made to be read. That shouldn't even be something that's available.
And honestly, I don't mind it. It's an interesting way to do it.
You son of a bitch. All right, so then let's jump to a broader overall. If let's say we had to change the publishing structure,
mm-hmm.
what do you think is the ideal? Is it going just straight to trades, get rid of periodicals altogether? Is it, you get Adam Kubert and you get Grant Morrison on a book for 5 issues and they do their Batman in Europe tale, and then so it's no longer Action Comics 1053 to 1058. It's
volume.
It's volume 15 Batman in Prague.
Yeah, I think you do. Because all of the big 2 stuff is written for the trade anyway, right now.
Yeah, and I think it would just take a couple hard months of restructuring, because comic book shops are going to sell more of that trade because it didn't come out first in floppies. So what you miss in the floppy, the floppy income monthly, you're going to make up for it every 4 months when a new Batman trade comes out and they sell 100,000 of them.
I don't know. Would it be beneficial? Would it be better for the medium as a whole, not necessarily the industry, but for comics, where you're only getting your Batman book every 4 months? Okay, so what else can I explore in the meantime?
But
I'm going to try this indie book,
right?
Or I'm going to try.
But also
Flash,
knowing Marvel and DC, there'd be 4 ongoing Batman titles, so there would be a trade released every month.
Sure.
Right. Yeah, but I also think a lot of that goes towards acceptance. Like if you're on the bus and you're reading Watchmen, not even Watchmen because that's a cheap shot as far as how widely it's accepted. So if you're on the bus and you're reading your run of Young Justice in trade format as opposed to reading a floppy on the bus, the
Sure.
perception is one is more valuable than the other. One isn't as immature as the other. So I think it could galvanize people into thinking like, oh, these are valid forms of literature.
Yeah, and just thinking about it now, I think about magazines, and when I find magazines lying around the house or they come in the mail or whatever, I most of the time don't think twice about just picking them up and throwing them out, because I know nobody is ever going to look at them, and they are created and produced to be disposable.
Right. And that's how monthly periodical comics used to, that's what they were created for. You'd roll them up.
But a collection, something that's bound with a spine.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there would be like my wife who has an English degree. She's an accomplished writer, accomplished legal writer. She doesn't read comics, but I think growing up, if comics were all graphic novels and the design wasn't made so goofy or whatever, then maybe she would have grown up reading, like Sandman shit in trade format. If in her mind it didn't equate to like little kid comic books.
And I don't know. Certainly the stigma is gone. So it's just a matter of the preferred method of consuming it. Do you want to do it at 22 pages once a month, or would you rather be able to sit down, 4 times a year and consume a complete beginning, middle, and end story?
Yeah, and it also has a storytelling advantage in trade. If you're not writing for monthly periodicals, you don't need to have a cliffhanger every 22 pages or every 20 pages. You could just tell a 100-page story or an 80-page story. Or my next note I had was it's what Andrew McLean does with Headlopper, is I think he releases 60-page comics. So they're not really big enough to have a spine. They're still saddle stitched. There's still a comic. It's just 60 pages. And I think they're like $7.99 a piece. They come out every 3 to 4 months. I like that format as well, because 60 pages has a beginning, a middle, and end. It's like you can do a perfect 3-act structure. You don't have to hit it.
Sure.
You don't have
it
to...
also really feels like a silly argument because there's room for both of these things.
Sure, but the problem is we're double dipping in both. Right now, we're trying to get one audience for the periodicals and one audience for the trade.
Are they different audiences?
Do you think people buy floppies and then at the end of the arc buy the trade as well?
No, but do you think that the audience are mutually exclusive? Do you think there's just a trade audience and just a floppy audience?
I do.
Yeah?
Yeah. I think
what percentage do you think overlap?
Well, even if it's like half overlap, that's different, because there's stuff like if I want to check out a book and it's already been going on for 3 or 4 issues and I know it's a miniseries, I'll just wait for the trade. But something like right now, monthly, I'm collecting Sword from X-Men from Marvel. And because I'm collecting it in floppies, I will not buy the trade because I don't need to buy the trade. So I'm a guy who will buy either or, depending on whatever the circumstance of the book is. But I think there are older dudes who like, these are my monthlies. These are what I get. And if they're buying a trade, it's an old like omnibus, or it's an old like Marvel Masterworks or something like that. And I think there are definitely people who only buy trades. I mean, that's the thing. That's a real thing. All trade waiters.
Yeah, if I had to put myself in a category right now, I'm probably among the latter. I think I'm just a trade guy at this point. If something piques my interest, I'll try to keep a mental note, or I'll go to Amazon or whatever and put the collection on my wish list. I'll never get to it, but
right.
I'll know I have the option to do so.
Right. But I do like that because right now, if let's say there's a Batman book coming out monthly right now and they're throwing like backups in there or maybe old reprints, they're now charging $6.99 for that monthly book. I would rather just have 60 new pages of Batman every 3 months and pay $7.99 for it instead of paying $12 for 60 pages. You could pay $8 because everyone knows if you have more pages in the book, you can get a cheaper. It doesn't cost as much to print. The reason floppies are outrageous to print is because you're only printing 22 pages a month. As someone who's printed things, the more pages you add on, it's not you're doubling.
The better the value for you.
Yeah. A 40-page black and white comic is not $8, but a 40-page color comic, Spider-Man comic is not $8, right. But a 20-page Spider-Man comic is $4, right? So
right,
yeah, the math doesn't check out. So I would be more than happy to spend $8 every 3 months, and again, get a complete story that doesn't have to you don't have to throw a loop to your readers every 20 pages, even if it doesn't make sense for the story. Just tell your story. But that's just me. And again, I'm burying retail shops in this argument because they're like, fuck. But again, I think if let's say your store sells 20 copies of Batman every month, then by the math, you would sell 60 of these mini trades every 3 months. I mean, that you would think. Or no, you'd still only sell 20. It's the same 20 guys. Yeah. Okay. So money wise, I'm getting caught up in when I said I wouldn't get caught up in it. I'm just saying I would rather read more than 20 pages of a comic in one sitting.
Okay. Yeah. I would be curious to know more about the printing aspect of it. I've got a couple of envelopes full of comps sitting in my car, and
that's good.
The last few days, every time I get in the car, there's
let the glue melt.
There's a pile of Superman books, and looking at them, I wonder, the covers are super duper covers. Just like the paper stock. It's almost it's almost alien to me, I guess, the way some of the monthlies look now. My $1.25 Jim Lee X-Men comics didn't feel like this, So right. I don't know. Are there any production corners that can get cut to save money, or is there a certain production standard that modern audiences expect for this specific product?
Well, it could be that because
a price artificially high.
Yeah, I know that nowadays it costs more to print on newsprint because most printers don't carry newsprint. It's not something that's in stock anymore. But it has to be, it has to be inflation mostly because a little insider baseball here, but page rates aren't higher than they were in the 90s when comics were printed on newsprint. So, or I guess they're probably about the same as when they were on newsprint. They're not, we're not talking about the Image heyday, but go back to the late 80s when comics were still printed on newsprint. A lot of the page rates now aren't that much different. So it's not that cost of labor has gone up. So it must be cost of printing, cost of production, cost of shipping, must be general inflation.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too, that inflation number. I wonder, I would be keen on seeing a chart or a graph or something on the relation of comic inflation prices with general inflation across an economy.
Yeah, I think I saw
they track the same way.
I think I saw someone tweet it and it doesn't track at all.
No.
Like if comics went up in the same,
it's much higher.
No, it's much lower. Like comics.
Oh, really?
Comics should only cost like $2.50.
Oh, okay. I'm saying that the comic inflation is much higher than
Yes, yes. Comic inflation
Okay.
is much higher than real inflation.
General economic inflation.
Right. But I remember being a kid and like that Excalibur #1. Excalibur was one of the first books that was like over $1. It was like $1.25 when X-Men was still like 75 cents or something like that. You know, X-Men was maybe $1. Excalibur was on better
Ah,
paper and it was like $1.50 or $1.25 or something.
sure.
And
Yeah, I think I remember X-Men books at like $1.25.
right.
And thinking about that now, that well, I don't know. Um, around high school, you know, when I started driving, gas was like $1.
Right.
And it's, you know, 3.5 times
Yeah, it kind
that
of
right now. And
when you
I
put
guess
it that
comics
way,
are kind of the same.
when you put it that way, it kind of makes sense. Like back in the 90s, $1.25 was like 30 something percent of minimum wage. Now $5 is like slightly more than 30% of minimum wage where we live in Arizona.
Okay, now it just makes me upset about everything.
Right. All right. So one more note. We're not really getting to any of David Kelly, creator of Ally McBeal's questions. I personally think 60 to 100 page stories in complete stories is my ideal format for comics. Personally.
If I'm going to buy a physical copy or physical media, comic
Right.
media, that's what I'm going to purchase.
Yeah. And if I'm going to buy floppies, I'm more than happy to put down, I'll say $2, but David Lopez knows I'm only paying $1 for those digital copies, but I'm happy to pay $1 to $2 for digital floppies just to get that monthly read. Like, yeah, I dig this. I can't wait to collect it. I'm more happy to do that. I will say, as comics jump up in price, I don't love the backups and the multiple story, like the multiple creative teams. Like Future State had a lot of books that were $8, and you would have 3 different stories with 3 different creative teams or whatever. That is my least favorite. As someone who's done a lot of anthology work, because that's what you do when you're breaking into comics, I do not like comic book anthologies. I don't like picking up a book for $8 when I only like one of the 3 artists, or I'm only interested in 2 of the 3 artists. I feel like it's a ripoff. I just want what I want. I just
Do
want
you
the one guy.
think that's the feeling of the majority of readers?
No, because the majority of readers don't give a fuck about who's drawing the book.
Okay, no, but do you? Okay, here's a question a different way, I guess. If you're buying, you know, whatever, if you're buying Justice League and there's an 8-page continuing backup story, are you reading the backup story at all, even if you're buying the book?
Well, I am, but I don't want that 8-page backup story to make that book cost an extra $1. Because I'm not buying it for that. I don't want to pay the extra
That's
$1 for
fair.
that
I
backup
can see
story.
that.
And that happened a lot in the Future State stuff, which a lot of it was good. Like there was some Future State stuff where the backup like really blew me away and I was really into it. But then there was some of it where I was like, oh, I would have rather just paid $4 and gotten the Dan Mora, you know, Dark Detective book or whatever.
What if the digital version doesn't have the backup story?
And it's but in that case, it would still be a $4.
But they'd have to cut the price of that out.
Right. And
if there were an option to do that.
Yeah, if there was an option to get, like, let's say, for example, there was a 60-page oversized Superman monthly, and I think that's where we're headed. But let's say that's where it was, and you only got 20 new pages of content on the main story. Say you were drawing the main story for 20 pages, and then an artist I don't like is also drawing a 15-page backup or 16-page backup, and your print copy of your book is $8 or $7. And the digital copy with just your story is $2.99. I'm buying the digital copy because I'm saving money, and it's what I want. That's always been my problem with anthologies: is you have a fucking Adam Hughes story followed up by a dude that you can't stand, and you're still paying $20 for the anthology when you might only like. If it's a 200-page anthology, you might only be into like, 40 pages of that anthology, but you're still paying the $20 or $25.
Right.
I've never understood the fascination with anthologies. People claim to like them. Readers claim to really like them, and they're all over Kickstarter. And like I said, I've been in plenty. I don't understand I don't understand the attraction of it unless you just
If you're getting a complete story with each entry, I think that's okay.
I think my biggest misunderstanding is I'm very particular about the comic book art that I enjoy. And I think most people who read comics enjoy all comic book art. So they can get an anthology and find something in every artist that they like. Whereas I can't do that. I'm obviously, I have my taste in wine shines through. I can't just accept anything. I need the cream of the crop. Shout out to Bay Bridge Wineries. So that's kind of my last note on that topic, is that don't feed me a more expensive book with 60 pages when 30 pages are shit I don't want to read, or the reprints.
Right.
And then make me pay for them. So that's me. I would like if we went to an all trade world and things were written as complete stories for the trade. And then I also wouldn't get as upset when creative teams change all the time. My problem with changing a creative team every 4 issues is because it's a periodical book. And I want what I had growing up. I want Jim Lee on 30 straight issues of X-Men, or, something like that. But if it was for a trade, I would almost never expect the same artist to be on 2 trades in a row.
Yeah. Well,
unless it's Hellboy trade.
Good news for everybody is that you can have it either way.
So, yeah, you can.
If you just want to read comics in a trade format, you can do that.
Yep.
We live in just want to read monthlies, you can do that.
We live in a perfect world. David E. Kelly also asked, he wanted to know if we think that there's a genre that could be done better in comics. So is there a genre that we enjoy in other media or mediums that we think deserves...
A genre that isn't currently widely represented in comics that we think can be done better in comics than it is in whatever medium it's currently
or as good? Is there a genre we think is getting the shaft in comics that we think could be done better?
I don't know. I mean, the majority of mainstream comics are action comics, and they're being presented in a format that lacks both motion and sound. So that particular genre is probably better in other things.
But we know from experience it's not. Like the best superhero comic is better than the best superhero movie, in my opinion.
I have to say yes.
Yeah, so
because I'll be excommunicated otherwise.
Well, no, I'm like my let's say the first 4 or 5 issue arc of The Authority. That's better than any superhero movie I've seen. Brian Hitch, Warren Ellis. That is a widescreen. The Ultimates is better than the Avengers movies, in my opinion.
Wow.
Especially the first 2 Avengers
movies. So what's a genre that could be really effectively represented?
Sure.
Without motion or sound?
Well, that's not the question. The question is what genres...
I think that kind of is.
I think the question is what genres do you enjoy that you think aren't getting the shine in comics?
I don't know that that's the question.
Well, okay, so then let's go your way.
Okay, yeah.
So to me, if we're gonna go strictly what could comics do better, is probably crime comics would be bigger because you don't need the action. A lot of it
is... I kind of thought about that, like crime thriller,
voiceover, noirish.
Right.
Jump on my Patreon for a noirish sci-fi book, $1 a month. Patreon.com/super75. $1 a month, 8 pages.
Yeah, I don't know.
Practically free.
I don't like the word better. I think the only thing you can hope to do is just it differently.
Yeah,
because anything outside film is the most complete method of getting a story across to an audience. You take a step back with comics because it lacks those couple things. You take another step back with prose because it lacks even more.
Mm-hmm. You know, so I'll say this, and then I'll give you a chance to think of it, and then we can come back to you. So my favorite genre is sci-fi in TV and film, but I don't read a lot of sci-fi comics. I mean, I guess if you think about it, all comics are kind of science fiction, but I don't read a lot of specifically sci-fi comics because I feel like everyone's trying to be Grant Morrison, and it gets too fucking weird and too like too into itself. Is a lot of sci-fi comics now. They're not sci-fi action comics. They're not a lot of sci-fi horror comics. There are a lot of like, look how cool
Okay.
we are. Look
Yeah.
how cool we are. That kind of shit. And
Right.
to me, that doesn't work. So I would like to see more kind of, I guess, like I don't even know. I don't even have an example for you. I will say I did read it. Speaking of digital comics, I did read a digital copy of Carl Kerschel's book. Carl Kerschel's book off his website, and it's a sci-fi black and white manga, and it's great. I mean, he has all the great motion lines that's in manga, but it's a great story as well. That's a good sci-fi comic done great. I guess more stuff like Fear Agent. That was a fun sci-fi comic because it was sci-fi action. Low is a great sci-fi book. So that kind of stuff. But I have no interest in like a Star Trek comic or something like that.
I think the thing comics has going for it that maybe like novels or film don't is I think comics are like the Etsy version of all of the things that you can get other places, because the art is all handcrafted. Even if you're doing it digitally, it's not going to exist without a person producing it.
Right.
And I understand even like all the special effects and shit. A Transformers movie is not going to exist without a team of effects artists sitting down and doing the work. But that's apples and oranges. It's not the same thing. Yeah, I kind of think there's something to that. There's still, like when I shared that Pepe page, there's still something about looking at something that somebody created with their hands and saying, "Wow,
yeah,
this is amazing. How could somebody do this?"
Yeah, and yeah, I guess it's the same for film though. Like, let's say you're a cinematographer, or let's say you're a director, cinematographer, actor, lighting
Sure,
guy, everything.
There's something different
because that's
something
multiple
different
people.
about pointing a camera at something.
Right. I was going to say, like, when you draw a panel, or when I draw a panel, or when Pepe Larraz draws a panel, unless it's a one-for-one trace, and of course there's only so many poses, so there's lots of duplicate similar poses, but unless it's a one-for-one facsimile, you created, like, you drew a page today. If there were 5 panels on it, you created one unique piece of art, but 5 kind of unique pieces of art that'll never be created again. Like you did, like, it's rare. Like, I drew a panel today that will never be drawn again, and did not exist until I drew it.
Right.
That is special. That's what comics can do. Movies can do that too, but again, movies, you might need 5-6 people to compose a shot that will never be composed again, or something like that. Whereas in comics, I could just pick up my stylus and open Photoshop and create something that had never been seen before. And even if it's only seen by 10 people in its entire existence, it's still unique in that, it's still unique.
Yeah.
So you're right. Like when you share a page, or when we gush over a page, in our text threads or whatever, it's because it's an amazing thing that can only be done, I think, in this medium, because it's not a painting, which is unique in its own way, and it also is one of one. But to illustrate something and tell a story while you're illustrating something, some painters do that, sure, but it's a unique thing to comics, and maybe that's why I'm still in love with like paper comics, because I can pull it off my shelf like an art book. I mean, that's what every trade I have, I treat like an art book, not like I don't have a single trade that I don't like the artist who drew it, except I have a shelf of stuff I drew, and I don't like the artist who drew that. But you know what I mean? Like, if I'm pulling
Sure.
all new X-Men off the shelf, I'm pulling it off to look at Stuart Emanin and Marte Gracia and
Right.
Wade Van Grawbadger pages. I'm not pulling off the shelf to read like whoever wrote it, which I know who wrote it. So shout out to Bendis. He's cool. Yeah. So I guess genres, I want to see more sci-fi action.
Okay. I don't know that there's a genre I want to see more of.
Like, you made a sci-fi Western.
Westerns, I guess.
But do you read Westerns? How many Western comics do you have that aren't your own comps?
No more than a couple.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe the genres I'm interested in, I'm only interested in because of comics, and that's what a lot of the comics that were available to me were. So that's the stuff I gravitate to. It's the chicken and the egg thing. I don't know which came first. When I sit down and watch movies, I watch action sci-fi movies, not a whole lot of horror stuff. I don't know how interested I would be in straight like comedy comics. I don't even because it's missing, one of those really important elements.
It's missing delivery,
timing, and inflection, and
that's my least favorite. I don't know if that's a genre, but that's my least favorite aspect in a comic book, is trying to be funny.
I have all the respect in the world for like humor comics that achieve what they set out to, because doing that, I think, is probably one of the hardest things. I always thought that being a newspaper comic strip creator would be the hardest job in the world. They have to be funny in print 365 days a year.
Yeah.
Seems terrible.
Well, to be honest, most of them aren't funny.
No, they're not.
364 days a year. But yeah, like, I have all the respect in the world for like a Mike Hawthorne who can draw Deadpool riding a rocket, eating a taco, throwing his pinky up with like a chihuahua behind him, like flying through the air. Like, that's comedy. That's a comedic plot element to a superhero book. It's not for me. I don't want to read that, but that is a skill set.
Yeah, I guess.
That is a skill set, because it's much easier to draw a moody comic like Mignola than it is to draw like a funny ass Deadpool comic.
Sure, and the subjectivity of something being funny versus something being cool is very different.
Yeah, like, yes. Yeah, my Patreon comic at patreon.com/super75. It's a lot of that's about being cool and mood and stuff like that. And to me, that's easier. If I had to make, if that had to be, it had to be funny. Like, if I had to be comedic and draw something that would make someone chuckle, it'd be a nightmare. I did a commission once of Aquaman kicking a puppy, and I'm like, that looks like the worst kick ever. That puppy is horrible. Aquaman looks like ass. Like, it looks like someone who doesn't know what kicking a puppy looks like. Like, I've never kicked anything in my life, but let me try to draw it based off a description of what kicking something looks like. That's what my commission looked like. Shout out to Negative Steve Mandel, who probably owns that shit. So yeah, it's hard, but it doesn't interest me. I didn't grow up reading like Donald Duck comics or Richie Rich comics. I didn't grow up reading Archie. Like, I have no desire for, none of that does anything for me at all. It actually turns me off of comics. If all comics became Thor Ragnarok, I would probably stop reading comics. I know you love that movie.
Yeah,
You didn't
love's a little strong.
you didn't love it when we reviewed it the first time.
No, I didn't. But it's the Last Jedi of Marvel movies.
Yeah. All right. So I guess final thoughts. My final thoughts are let's write complete arcs and sell books like they're books. Let's sell comics like they're proper books. Let's stop selling them like they're magazines, because you don't see people walking around with details anymore or Maxim. So let's stop pretending like the periodical market is so
yeah, why can't I buy them then at the checkout?
Right, because they don't make, they're all online now.
So
they don't make.
I mean, no, yeah, but I still see.
Oh, you're saying
Jessica Biel.
Okay.
At every checkout that I go to.
Right. So you're saying if you're going to produce 20 pages a month of a Batman serial,
I should be able to get it there. I should be able to get it fucking anywhere. I should be able to get it walking through the airport or at the gas station.
Right. It's like, going to Barnes and Noble and then being like, oh, that new book that's released. I'll just buy the first 22 pages of it right now. And then I'll come back next week and get the next 22 pages of it. Like that doesn't happen in.
Yeah. Like, I mean, yeah. It's a weird thing because, yeah, no other narrative deals in this format. So, I mean, the library doesn't even carry floppies.
No. Yeah, let's go to
They do carry magazines.
Yeah.
How fucking weird is that?
That is weird. Yeah, let's go to. In my opinion, let's go to trades. Let's turn comics into a proper book market. And then get rid of the stigma. Start having real comics, not just be on the graphic novel bestseller, but let's try to get on real bestsellers. Let's try to treat them like real books.
Yeah, it might be trending that way, man. I mean, I think, like I alluded to earlier, it's the stigma is gone, and
well,
the war is over.
Right,
we won. Yeah, I was driving around doing something the other night, and some fucking lunkhead on sports radio was talking about Thanos and the Infinity Stones. I cannot believe what world we're living in.
Yeah, you know what, though? Speaking of that, as far as it becoming mass consumed media, when I couldn't think of anything for the show this week, I was like, oh, let's do another quiz. So I started searching like superhero quizzes, and they're all so basic.
Oh, sure.
That I couldn't find anything for the likes of you and I. Even the one that's like hardest Marvel test ever. It would be like,
yeah, I'll have to go online and see if there's like
the answer would be like Harry Osborn or some bullshit.
A Marvel version of Trivial Pursuit or something, and I'll buy it and we'll sit down and we'll do a show where we just play.
Yeah, like that's like, so it is mass produced, but being mass produced, it then becomes. They have to water it down to make it digestible by the masses. But I will give like the MCU credit. If you had gone back in time 30 years and told me how good like Endgame and Infinity War would be just as movies overall, I would be like, that's impossible that they would be that quality.
Yeah, it's like, did you see the Hasselhoff Nick Fury movie? There's no way.
Did you see the Gen X pilot that didn't get picked up? Come on, man.
It's so weird.
Or
so weird.
Nightman on the wasn't the CW back then. It was the UPN. Nightman on UPN.
Yeah, just one of the most surreal experiences of my adult nerd life was sitting in the theater watching Endgame. And the middle-aged woman next to me was crying because Iron Man died. It's like, oh.
Doesn't belong to us
anymore. Unbelievable.
Doesn't belong to us anymore.
No.
And it's crazy. And then it's even crazier when you think about like, okay, so those movies did great. They had Captain America, Iron Man, Spider-Man. Sure, they would do great. Oh, what's the new slate? Shang-Chi, a Doctor Strange sequel, a third Ant-Man movie. Like that is the shit that blows me away.
And they'll be fine. Yeah, would anybody anybody in the world have predicted that Black Panther would be the biggest movie in history?
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's fucking nuts. And they're all going to be good movies. They might not be my favorite movies. They might not be something I run out to see, but
And that's the secret.
They will all be competent, well done movies. Especially especially Ant-Man 3 Quantumania.
Yeah, every other studio, every other franchise, you just need to get one thing right. Mm-hmm. That's don't make a bad movie. That's all you got to do is not make crap.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of like this podcast. Don't make crap.
No, we failed.
Speaking of crap, how was your moldy on the outside can of wine?
That was the same as last time. A little stinkier, so I'll have to deduct like a half star.
I've completely stopped. Maybe Hank will take this up on his end, but I've completely stopped even posting ratings of drinks. We go weeks without even registering them. But let's just go. Would you recommend that if it wasn't in a stinky ass fridge?
Sure, it's good. It's drinkable. I could throw back half a dozen of these.
All right, and let our listener know what it is again, the brand and the type.
Barefoot Summer Red Spritzer.
All right. Okay, I had a bottle of last weekend during the open house. I bought a bottle of wine for whoever didn't want beer, but then Malvy showed up with things that weren't beer, so people drank those. So I had a whole bottle of Barefoot Pinot. Pretty good, and I will say, as much as I love the $3 bottles of wine, when you pay $6 for a bottle of wine, it is better.
It's twice as good.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I put it in the freezer, and I forgot about it for a little while. So when I pulled it out, it was like half frozen. So you had like the ice chips, but they were wine chips. It was so fucking good. Those Pinot Grigio.
I'll have to bounce down to my local grocer and pick up a $3 Bay Bridge.
Yeah, so Bay Bridge doesn't have a straight up. For the rest of you bridgers out there, you already know what I'm talking about. But let me tell these people, Bay Bridge doesn't have a straight up Pinot. They have a Pinot Grigio Colombardo, which is a mix. But go ahead and get the Bay Bridge Sauvignon Blanc. That is tits. Don't get the Moscato because that's like drinking ice cream. That's too much. Chardonnay's too much. Get the Cabernet Sauvignon Bay Bridge. And if you're gonna get a red Bay Bridge, get the Merlot, get the Cab, not the Merlot. But tonight I'm here to talk about this Rosé Our Way from Four Peaks. It was fine. It was good. 6.7%. Drank it, no problems. Highly recommend it. I wish they did better on the label. That's all.
I think the label's fine for what it is.
Yeah, and I've decided I just have to embrace. I'm a fan of white wines, not really reds, but I will drink reds. But also rosés and white Zinfandel, which tastes just like a rosé to me as far as Bay Bridge goes. The other day we were out and my wife had I think a $6 glass of a Pinot, and I tried that and it was good. So I don't think people are crazy when they say the more you spend on wine, the better it tastes. There might be something to that.
Up to a point.
Up to a point. But for someone like me who consumes more than your average bear, a $3 bottle is perfectly fine.
Yeah. I will do that tomorrow.
Good. Get it. Well, I don't know what it is unless you go to Fry's. I don't know where it is other places. Yeah, and I just find it I look for the $2.99 sticker because it's on sale. It's supposed to be $4.99. It's on sale. But it's one of those things that's always on sale. So yeah. Get yourself a Fry's Club card. Yeah. So there we go. We're done.
Right on.
Any final thoughts?
No.
All right. Wrap it up for us, buddy.
Oh, they're coming for you.
Yep. I got to get out of here.
All right. Bye, everybody. Yeah, I don't want to say fuck everything anymore.
Be good to each other. Let's be better.
That's right.
Yeah. Like Melania Trump says, let's be better.
Be better.
Be better.